Hi, my name's Dom, you can call me Domble. Welcome to Seshcap, Session 1. Today on Seshcap, we're going to be talking about learning sessions. A lot of people say they have a lot of trouble teaching people the game. Some players don't seem to pick it up quickly enough. Some people want to jump straight in, don't know how. Now, I know that this was the focus of the whole campaign, but this first session specifically wasn't really a main session. In my session notes, I referred to it as session 0.5, though it was a full session. Meg came to me and said, before we get into the full campaign proper, I want to do a session so that I can get more familiar with the rules, which is perfect. I kind of hoped for that kind of thing anyway. So, here are the 5 things you need to do when running your learning session. 1. Make your players' characters for them. Sit down with them, let them make the decisions, but do all the numbers for them. Do all the bookkeeping, busy work, number of feats they get. Even if you're using something like Pathfinder, which I use, I like to physically make it on their phone for them and then show them how it works after. Meg came to me and she said, I want to be Aurora Borealis themed. In fact, that's the name of her character, is Aurora Borealis, and have star powers and that kind of thing. And I immediately jumped to the Cosmos Oracle. So when she also said she wanted to be able to divine the future from the stars, I knew that the Oracle was a perfect fit. Now, traditional wisdom would say that the Oracle is one of the most complicated classes in Pathfinder 2. Maybe don't chuck it at a new player. But the thing about these games is they're designed to be learned. They're not, they're not rocket science, and yeah, there's a lot of numbers and things to remember about them, but they're designed to be played. The most complicated part about them is really making them. So if I eliminate that bit of complexity, then Meg's just gonna play it. Tell them, hey, don't you worry about the numbers, let me worry about blank. The other player in this session was Luke, who came to me and said, well, I want to be a bit of a stoner surfer slacker guy, but secretly, he's not a slacker, he's just efficient. He's incredibly intelligent, but just seems like he's never doing anything because he's already finished his work, which he wanted to do by being able to summon or create little guides that go and do everything for him. My picture for the character is he did all of his homework in class, so he went and had a surf, and now he's laying on a hammock which was constructed while he was surfing by his little constructs or servants or whatever. A bit of a very specific image, but we've been playing the Inventor playtests class, and it actually fits really well. He gets a little construct that he's called Grunchkin that does a lot of his heavy lifting. Luke had more experience with the game, which is actually really, really useful for a learning session. One of the absolute best ways to teach a new player to the game how to play is for them to watch the other players around them react to what they're doing. They can say, oh, you have a specific ability that can do this, let me check if I have abilities that work. When Dom gave you 3 options for what you're going to do, are you going to run, hide, or fight, you picked a 4th option, which was talk to them. Okay, cool, I now know that that's a thing, I can make my own choices. That's the #1 way that people learn the game, is by watching the people around them play. When people are new to the game, and you've made their character for them, try to remember what they can do, so that way you can speed it along. By saying, hey, you're an Oracle, you're level 1, I know that means that I put you at Charisma at 18, your spellcasting modifier is +4, your spell save DC is 17. I'm just going to say what it is to speed along, but for future it's just down there on the sheet. And they go, oh, cool, yep, I should know that, I'm going to keep looking at it. 2. Narrative importance. Have that learning session matter. It's an incredibly important part of storytelling that the first thing you see should matter just as much as the last thing you see. The opening shot of a movie is the most important shot. It tells you what the entire rest of the campaign is going to be about. There is nothing that personally gets my synapses firing up in any kind of story when something that happens in episode 10 is a direct consequence of what happened in episode 1. So for this session being very much an introduction to both the game, but also my homebrew setting and my homebrew story that's happening, I needed to be layering and layering on concepts and rules and ideas that are going to be relevant throughout the whole thing. And while you have to be prepared to throw absolutely anything and anything away, having that ability to still kind of direct things subtly is so important. And you can always retcon what that thing at the start really meant. I mean, they don't know, they're not reading your notes. We introduced both of the characters' families and also a couple of other students that are second years heading off to the boat. One of these, in fact, was the rival of Meg's character, Aurora, whose name is Exterius Spatium, where Aurora's curse and also Aasimar heritage manifests as being incredibly pale skin, hair that starts blonde, but as the curse manifests, turns green and floats like an aurora, and startling green eyes. And all of her family has these divine beasts, animal companions, like her dad has an albino snow tiger. Exterius Spatium, who also comes from the same city-state as her, is part of the kind of counterpoint family. They don't worship the stars and the celestial bodies, they worship the void snake, who is the space between them, coiling through the celestial bodies. Their gifts manifest as being tieflings, that they have this deep night sky blue skin, their eyes are bright white like stars, and Exterius has this snake that's always coiled around her that is a matte black snake, and they wear this studded black leather where the studs catch the reflections like stars. And Exterius is just or XT as she goes, is just the most annoying, preppy, goth teenage girl of all time. And her and Aurora have this dynamic where their families are friends, but even that is only a political kind of thing. It's like if John Howard and Kevin Rudd both had teenage girls that had to get along, which is just super fun to play. So we meet Exterius and her family. We meet Luke's family, who is just this family of inventor stoners. His dad built the sewers and is working on the city walls. His older sister is in the medical industry and is developing the starts of the first beginnings of vaccination medicine in the world. As they're gathering, there's a big crowd because this is a small town that feeds into Repudium. It's like a uni town. So when people start heading off to Repudium, it draws a bit of a crowd. This little kind of interaction lets me get in some world building, kind of eases the players into their new characters, and lets them kind of express things about their characters by what their families are like. If you have a good relationship with your family, it says something about you. If you have a bad relationship with your family, it says something about you. People are influenced by who they were raised by. They could express their characters in a little bit in their reaction to these characters and what I've presented them with. But in media res is such a powerful storytelling tool that I wanted to get straight into the action as quick as possible. With new players, you don't want to be stuck in a tavern for the first 3 hours just talking about what their characters are eating and how their characters feel. That's great once everyone knows what their characters are. First session, people don't know that. Chuck some combat in them. I sent an adult silver dragon at them. The adult silver dragon said, "You're fools to send your children to this school, it's dangerous." He breathed a bunch of ice on the crowd, and everyone started running and stampeding away. In addition to this pandemonium, ratfolk from the sewers started coming up and seemingly instigating riots and attacking people. Luke, the more experienced player, knew that an adult silver dragon is not an okay thing for like level 1 characters to be even thinking about fighting. You can prey on that metagame knowledge of your more experienced players. Using a narratively important story moment to teach how the game works is essential. So now these Yosoki have kind of infiltrated the crowd and are also causing trouble, like starting to turn things violent. The players get split up from their families in the mess, and initiatives roll. 3. Dripfeed the complexity. Let it ramp up as the session goes along. Initiative is a really important thing to teach players about, especially in 2nd edition, because it's different to most other editions where you can substitute any skill that you like for it. We'd learned about diplomacy and deception and that kind of thing talking to the families beforehand. We had society checks to know things about where the gnome comes from, and we had a few diplomacy or deception checks to hide how much Aurora dislikes this character of XT. And now we get into how combat works. Don't throw them in the deep end. Start off slow. That doesn't mean you have to start off boring, but build up to it. Start with a few skill checks, then maybe how a save works, and then go into initiative. In addition, because the initiative is a perception check, they rolled high enough that I said, and also there's something wrong about that dragon. Get some tension into the combat, knowing that I gave them juicy tidbits of, oh, we might need to recall knowledge here, and also we need to find out where our failings are because we've gotten separated from them. I didn't actually throw enemies at them in the first round of combat. Now, this is a tricky thing. It can get a little old if you have 5 or 6 players, but if you only have 2 to 4 players, sometimes, especially in a learning session only, giving them a chance of 1 round to see how movement works and how the action economy works. In Pathfinder 2, you get 3 actions per turn. Also, in this case, I wanted to introduce how saving throws work. They're in a stampeding riot, fortitude saving throw, or you're knocked down and you take some damage as you're trampled. This worked out really well because we also got to explore how a critical failure works on a saving throw. Aurora is knocked to the ground, trampled a little bit, and we also learn again how conditions work. Now, it may seem like I'm introducing a lot all at once, but it's not that much. It's just learning that there are conditions in the game, such as being knocked over, that it takes an action to stand up, that taking damage is bad, but it's done in a very simple way that doesn't feel like it's overly slow, and I'm not stopping the game. And then it's on the second round that those Yosoki that they've noticed, a few have come in and are causing trouble, trying to turn this stampede into a full-blown riot. The players also do a few recall knowledge checks, and they learn a few things about the dragon. 1, it's a large-sized creature, which it shouldn't be. Adult dragons are huge size. 2, it's a silver dragon. Silver dragons are generally good aligned, being metallic. I am not going crazy into like alignment restrictions in this, but generally what you know is that if it's metallic, it's a good guy, and if it's just a straight chromatic color, then it's generally a bad guy. And then 3, based on a really, really good question, they discover that it's not a dragon, it's an illusion. An illusion that is probably being controlled by someone within about 1 kilometer. This really gets the gears going. Why this moment is so important in the first session to begin with is because, just like in Harry Potter, not everything is as it seems. Not everyone that seems good is good, and not everyone that seems bad is bad. And the fact that this is seemingly coordinated with a group of people from the sewer to cause panic and a riot means that, yeah, there is something afoot here that needs further investigating. However, you're now getting your head stomped in by panicked people, and you're not quite sure where your dad is. So we get into combat then. Quick little, very easy combat against some ratfolk. My problem with this session was I was expecting another player to show up. They got caught up with work. Only 2 people were there for it. It happens. I'm not too fussed about it. But at that point, I didn't quite have a grasp on balancing encounters as well as maybe I should have for running for only 2 people. As the dust settles, they find a little ratfolk boy. He looks like he's about 7 or 8 human years, which means that in Yosoki years, he's probably maybe just under a year old. Different ancestries age differently to humans. He's crying and he says that the ratfolk that came out of the sewer took his sister, and that's the only family he has at the moment. All the students of Repudium have to be 15 years old going in, just like a regular high school in the real world. What that means in this fantasy setting, though, is that if you're a ratfolk going in at 15, you're probably closer to the maturity of like someone in their mid-20s. And if you were an elf going in at 15, you'd probably be about the equivalent of someone who's 10. Weird detail that is going to be relevant in just a little bit. He says that it was just him and his sister because his mom's gone off to school. His older sister kind of looks after him here, but she's now just being taken down into the sewer. Boom, boom, boom. Players are like, cool, we'll run down, we'll help you look for her. And so he guides them through the sewers. Now, not all ratfolk live in the sewers, it's a cultural thing. The city that feeds into Repudium, which I forgot the name of, so called Bigsmith in the session, because someone had recently been watching Big Mouth. The native people of Bigsmith were the Yosoki, and they lived both on the surface and in warrens. Then one of the large empires of this world came in, colonized it, Repudium got their independence as a colony, and now the rat folk live both above the surface and also in the sewers, because it's a bit of a traditional thing for them to live underground. So he leads them through the sewers. I didn't want to get into how exploration and that works in this session, because it's something that isn't going to be hugely relevant in my campaign. And when you're running a learning session, you need to pick and choose what you teach. And what I really wanted to teach right then was hazards. I'm a big It's Always Sunny in Philly fan, and the concept of a sewer tidal wave that comes through has always delighted me. So cool, I'll chuck that in as a hazard. You then learn about the second condition. As people fail, they take a little bit of damage. That's how hazards work. Let's move on. Number 4, don't kill them. Might seem obvious. The first session, preferably nobody dies. It can make for a memorable session to kill someone, but don't set out to do it. In fact, really dial back the difficulty for this one. And it's then they come to a crocodile. Now, if you know Pathfinder 2nd edition, a crocodile is a level 2 creature, which is intended for a full party of level 1 characters. Is going to have a little bit of trouble fighting a crocodile. A full party of 4. I have 2 level 1 characters, neither of which had really healed up that well after the last fight. There's a couple of reasons that you don't want to kill them. One, when you've dialed back the difficulty, remember that they're new players. They might still die anyway, they'll find a way. But also, they don't need to know that there's no chance of them dying. Let them explore how their character works in a safe space. They don't need to know it's a safe space though. And naively, I did this by looking at my Dungeon Master screen saying, well, if I put the weak template on it, it becomes a level 1 character, which means that it's worth 40 XP, which means that it's exactly a moderate encounter. What I hadn't accounted for is the light level in the sewer, being that it was dim light, people couldn't really see, so misses were happening, and just how strong the death roll of a crocodile is. Now, if you're unfamiliar with crocodiles in both Pathfinder and the real world, crocodiles are terrifying because what they do is they bite you, they grab you, and unless you can get away from it, often by losing whatever they've grabbed, they will take you into the water and they will roll and roll and roll, which knocks all the air out of you, so you drown very quickly, and it just tenderizes you. That's why I am terrified of saltwater crocodiles, which are native only to Australia. Really have a look at the XP budget or encounter building rules for your system. Pathfinder 2 specifically has really robust ones, and even if you want your players to think they can die, don't let them die before they know how their character fully works. Let them make their mistakes. That's how you learn. This crocodile was weak, but it got a couple of juicy crits, and all of a sudden, Archie Benson, which is our resident inventor, found himself on death's door. Now I thought to myself, what would a crocodile do? It would continue to roll until he was dead. So I improvised on the fly. I decided that, cool, the people that took their sister have trained this crocodile, and the crocodile is now going to take him to them. It disappears into the sewer, swims away with his unconscious body, and now we have to rescue him. This is the kind of thing that you can only do a few times in a campaign. If you pull those punches too much, players stop caring about the decisions they make because, hey, we're not at any risk of dying. But on the other hand, we're not out here to have a bad time. We want players to feel strong and feel good about their choices. That said, that does not in any way mean that you can't kill their character later on. Just for this session, this is where you can take it a little bit easier. One of the reasons that I felt I could take Archie is because he did have that construct companion as an inventor. I now said, cool, you're now full-time playing as Grunchkin until we see what happens to Archie. It was a fun way for him to explore exactly what Grunchkin could do and what his stats were like, and really ratcheted up the tension. They then go through to the sewer and they discover that dear Rat Boy, as they were calling this Yosoki, actually had ears like an elf. an interesting little tidbit that they noticed that they completely disregarded, but meant that later when I pulled some rug pull bullshit, I could say, I told you so earlier. So they come to this albino elf, who reveals that not only is Tommy Ratboy's father, he's also Tommy Ratboy's older sister's father, who he has tucked into bed, but clearly in some kind of magically induced sleep. They also deduce that this is the guy who made the illusion of the dragon. The whole thing about the school being dangerous, well, he believes it, but it was really so that he and his friends could get his kids back from this mother who's a rat folk, managed to get one of the very sought after scholarships to go to this school. It could change their life. He didn't like the school because of the whole you have to be 15 years old thing, meant that he felt it was incredibly racist against elves, which it is. She brushed that off, went off to become an adventurer, and when she came back after her first year, did a complete 180. This is someone who is clearly an unreliable narrator because he's just had to kidnap his own children, and believe it or not, just because he's their dad doesn't make it okay. He goes on this tangent about how she now despised him, despised her kids, seemingly for being elves. The school did something to change her, and if you watched the last episode, you know that that's a not insignificant clue as to what's going on in this entire campaign. The school changing people, that's its whole thing. But to the players, it seemed like he was just someone whose wife left him and took the kids, and now he's bitter, which is also the truth. And 5, keep it exciting. Just because you're slowly ramping it up and you don't want anyone to die, doesn't mean you can't have people on the edge of their seats. Teach someone how an athletics check works by having them run away from an ogre. You don't want to kill your players, but you do need to put a little jazz on it, you know? Yeah, maybe they're just getting mugged by a couple of thugs, but these thugs have knives and they're kicking the shit out of you, dude. Make it exciting. Get them invested. There's a tense hostage negotiation where he wants them to hand over Tommy Ratboy in exchange for Archie. Tommy doesn't want to go, which is a big, blaring red oh shit sign. It's a really tense moment where they meet in the middle with their hostages to exchange them. This guy recognizes what's about to happen, and the fight breaks out. Now they have to fight this guy who was originally they were meant to fight alone, plus this crocodile. This is a very tough fight. What they didn't know is that the crocodile only had 4 health when it ran away with Archie, so the next attack on it kills the crocodile. Huge eruption of like, yes, we did it! But this guy is still the boss of this session. An incredibly tense encounter in which I really do nearly kill Archie, who now has the wounded condition, after an incredibly tense battle in which it really could have gone either way. They take Tommy and Junie, who is Tommy's older brother, back to Archie's family, the inventing family, one of which is a medical scientist. They agree to look after Junie and Tommy until Junie wakes up, and we wrap up the session. What we learned about today was building a learning session. If you can introduce these mechanics in a way that is narratively important, fun to do, but also not overwhelming, and still drip fed even if the players don't feel like it, that is incredible. That's it for this video. Cheers for watching all the way through to the end. It's actually really important. I've really started ramping up on a really big project that's going to go onto this YouTube channel that I'm really excited about. It's going to hopefully happen in about 4 months. If that seems like a long time to be waiting, just hit subscribe button and it'll pop up when it happens. Until next time, have a good week, enjoy yourself.